All right.
I'll introduce myself.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, as a reminder, we are the Sunday school series for Lent is wilderness. So we're going kind of through the wilderness narrative, starting with Exodus. For those who were here last week, or who maybe remember who watched it, let's sum up. Kind of where are we? What did we talk about last time? It's an Exodus. So we had the Exodus.
The Exodus.
Yeah, the Exodus. So the Exodus. What happens immediately after the Exodus? Or not immediately after. So they get out.
10 Commandments.
Not yet. We're not there yet.
Oh, okay.
So they get to probably around here, where this map says over here.
And the seas departed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the parting of the seas. So this sort of final, sort of God's victory over Pharaoh, over the gods of Egypt, a reminder for the people. We had this beautiful song of Exodus, and there were two interesting words that these are the first times they come up in Scripture. Anybody remember what those are? Kind of important ones for the New Testament and our faith. Redemption, literally a purchasing of a slave for the purpose of freedom. And another one starts with an S. Salvation, literally to save, right? Both of these, the first time they come up in Scripture, all the way through Genesis, neither of these words are used. But in Exodus chapter 15, we have it. So they have come across the Red Sea, wherever that might have been, right? They're excited, do you think? Probably. There's victory over Egypt. The Egyptians have been completely destroyed at this point. They are now free. So how do you think they feel about this? Pretty good.
Pretty happy.
Yeah,
Liberated.
pretty happy. They're liberated, right? How long do you think that's going to last?
Not long.
Until they got hungry.
So, verse 20 of chapter 15 of Exodus. Then the prophet Miriam, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women went out after her with tambourine and with dancing, and Miriam sang to them, "Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously, horse and rider he has thrown into the sea." Then Moses ordered Israel to set out from the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness of Shur. They went 3 days into the wilderness. 3 days. We go 3 days into the wilderness, the wilderness of Shur, around here. What do you think they might be wanting after 3 days?
Water and food.
Water and food. They went 3 days into the wilderness and found no water. They don't have any water. They've probably drunk up all the water that they had with them, and they're not finding any. But there's hope, right? When they came to Marah, which was a place of water, they could not drink the water of Marah because it was bitter. That is why it is called Marah, and Marah means bitter. So they are wandering in the wilderness. They cannot find water. They find water, but they can't drink the water. And the people complained against Moses, saying, "What shall we drink?" He cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood, and he threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. There the Lord made for them a statute and an ordinance, and there he put them to the test. He said, "If you will listen carefully to the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in his sight, and give heed to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will not bring upon you any of the diseases that I brought upon the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you." So they can't find water. They do find water. It's not good water. So what did they do? What do the people do first?
Complain.
They complain.
Whine.
Who do they complain and whine about?
God has brought you out here, now you're
Moses.
gonna let me die.
Why has God done this to us? Right? 3 whole days into freedom, and it's a little bit difficult. And it's not so fun. And they start to whine and complain. So Moses cries to God, and God gives him this solution of putting a log into the water. Does that work? How does that work?
Probably neutralizes the bitterness.
Could neutralize the bitterness? I think what's going on here is that it's one of those things in the Bible that purposely doesn't really make sense. Maybe we could, I guess it neutralizes, right? But that's kind of the point, is that God says, okay, do this thing, and now it'll be better. Now you can drink it. Just like you don't see a way across the Red Sea, just follow me. So God gives them a way to drink this water. And now everything's fine and happy, and everybody's happy, right? And then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they camped there by the water. So they were on their way the whole time to this place where there's all of this water. There's all of this goodness. They didn't know it. They got stuck. We don't have the thing that we want right now. God, what are you doing to us? Moses, why have you done this to us? And we will continue to talk about how these people, that's their reaction, right? But we're very different to that, aren't we? No, right? This is just the human circumstance. When we encounter trouble, we immediately tend to revert back to that sort of, why is this happening, right? Now, many of us have been through enough times and struggles and that sort of thing that maybe that's not our first thought, but we as humans, that tends to be the case.
I'm
right?
sitting,
The
my
minute
mind
it
is
gets-
just clicking on taking a trip
Mm.
with children in the back seat. And are we there yet?
Right.
And I'm thirsty.
When are we there yet?
And
Right.
I'm hungry.
I'm bored.
I'm bored.
Yeah.
I really
When are we
need
there
to
yet?
go to the potty. When they really don't, because they just went 5 minutes early at the last exit.
Or you've asked, do you need to go potty? Do you need to go potty? You need to go potty? Something to look forward to. You need to go potty? No. I have to go potty now.
It just hit me all of a sudden. I
Right.
pictured that image and I said, oh,
Absolutely.
yeah,
It's the
yeah,
same sort of
same-
thing, right?
Same sort of, and we are the same way. Even if we're driving, we're thinking, God, is this just exit 17? I
Right,
got
yeah.
to 27. I got
gonna
10
get
more
there yet?
miles. I don't know.
Thank God for GPS where we go. Yeah, okay, it's an hour.
Yeah,
and
that's
4 minutes, okay. So the whole congregation of the Israelites set out from Elim, and Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, in the 15th day of the 2nd month after they had departed from the land of Egypt. So if you did the math, they've been a couple months here, and they come into the wilderness of Sin. The significance of that name, of the wilderness of Sin, is not really much, because sin, it's just, that's what it's called. Our word sin is an English word. It has no connection with the wilderness of Sin. But there you go. They're in this wilderness. The whole congregation of the Israelites complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots and ate our fill of bread. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." So what are they wanting? What are they in need of? Food, right? So they have had water. They've hung out in a place with water for a while, and now they need food. And they start to complain, but we get a little bit more out of the complaints here, right? In the previous one, it's just, and they complain. But now we have a reference. This is what they actually say. If only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the fire pots and ate our fill of bread, for you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. So what do you hear in those complaints? What are they actually saying? What are they complaining about?
They're complaining about not getting food. They're not complaining about being slaves.
Right. They have completely, it's been a couple of months now that they've been out of slavery, and they have completely recast their entire life in Egypt. Remember back when we were in Egypt?
We got food, yeah.
We had food. We were around flesh pots. We sat around, kind of the idea is fondue is kind of what I always think of. Like, this boiling thing, and you just eat, and you just eat, and you just eat. Was that them who were eating around the flesh pots? No, it was not, right? They were the people who were like making sure that fire was going and making sure that there was food for the people. Probably not. They were those kind of slaves, probably. But anyways, it wasn't them. That's not what their life was like in Egypt, and yet that's what they go to. They've completely recast, they've completely reformulated what it looked like back there. We had all of that. And what do they wish had happened instead of this?
Wish they died.
Wish they died, and who had done it?
God.
That God had killed us. It would have been better for us if God had killed us back in Egypt, where at least we were comfortable, right? At least we were surrounding those flesh pots, we remember, right? Instead of what do they think is happening now?
Just like
being starved.
They're slowly being starved, right? God is killing us here, out in the wilderness. And you know what? It's way less fun to die out in the wilderness of starvation than to die around a flesh pot in Egypt. We knew what we had there. It was much more easy there. Now we're out in the wilderness. Now we don't like it here, and God is just going to kill us. I wish God had just done it quickly, because clearly this is God's intent. God just wants me to die out here in the wilderness of starvation, because God is in a bad mood today or something like that. Right? Those are their assumptions. That's the way that they're seeing this experience, is that God is purposely trying to kill them in the most egregious and terrible way they can imagine. That's what they're thinking. So they're complaining, they're whining against Moses, and now Aaron is being brought into this, because Aaron was the mouthpiece for Moses. These guys, they are leading us out into the wilderness. They're in charge. It's their fault. They want us to die. Then the Lord said to Moses, I'm going to rain bread from heaven for you. And each day the people shall go out and gather enough for that day. In that way I will test them. Whenever they follow my instruction, whether they follow my instruction or not. On the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather on other days. So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, in the evening you shall know that it was the Lord who brought you out from the land of Egypt. And in the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your complaining against the Lord. For what are we that you complain against us? And Moses said, when the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening, and your fill of bread in the morning, because the Lord has heard the complaining that you utter against him, what are we? Your complaining is not against us, but against the Lord. And Moses said to Aaron, say to the whole congregation of the Israelites, draw near to the Lord, for he has heard your complaining. And as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the Israelites, they looked towards the wilderness, and the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. And the Lord spoke to Moses and said, I have heard the complaining of the Israelites. Say to them, at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall have your fill of bread, Then you shall know that I am the Lord your God. In the evening, quail came up and covered the camp. And in the morning, there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the layer of dew lifted, there in the surface of the wilderness was a fine, flaky substance, as fine as frost on the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they said to one another, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, "It is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Gather as much of it as each of you needs, for an omer to a person according to the number of persons, all providing for those in their own tents." The Israelites did so. Some gathered more, some less. But when they measured it with an omer, those who had gathered much had nothing over, and those who had gathered little had no shortage. They gathered as much as each of them needed. And Moses said to them, "Let no one leave any of it over until morning." But they did not listen to Moses. Some left part of it until morning. It bred worms and became foul. And Moses was angry with them. Morning by morning they gathered it as much as each needed, but when the sun grew hot, it melted. All right, we're going to stop there. That's a good amount to talk about. So Moses cries out to, or not even Moses cries out to God, but God just says, so here's the solution. Just tell them this. There are a few things that they are told to tell the Israelites. 3 things. What are they? This was a long time ago. I know I did the same with my 6th grade. I read too much. They're going to see the glory of the Lord.
No.
So that's what it starts with. So they're out in the wilderness. It's presumably during the day, and they're whining and complaining. And Moses says, all right, you are all going to see the glory of God. And they look over and they see in the wilderness, they see this huge pillar of cloud that has been before them. And God himself speaks out of the pillar, right? It's not just Aaron and Moses that are saying, hey guys, don't worry about it, we'll be okay. God himself says, you are going to see the glory of the Lord. And you're going to see the glory of the Lord in 2 things. They're going to see in the evening quail. They're going to have meat tonight. And in the morning they're going to have bread. So 2 signs, right? You're hungry, I'm going to provide for you food. So first they see the glory of the Lord. First they see God himself saying, guess what? I am going to take your situation in hand. Right? I'm going to supply your need. Just a side note, we see from Moses a really interesting sort of self-differentiation where he says, why are you complaining? You're complaining against me, but you're actually complaining against God, right? He doesn't actually own you're complaining against me. It's that you're complaining against God, and God does this. And God provides this flock of quail. Quail are fat, fairly flightless birds. They're relatively easy to catch, right? So they all just kind of flock into the camp. And these people are just able to, oh great, quail, right? I'm just going to eat it. So they eat meat, fresh meat. They're several months out of Egypt. So this is probably the first fresh meat that they've had. They're in the wilderness. So they eat this. They have their fill. Great. So that's the meat. And then in the morning they find bread. But not the way they're expecting it. There's this stuff on the ground. And they say, what is it? Which literally, the transliteration of what is it in Hebrew is manna. They don't know what it is. They call it, what is it? But Moses says, that stuff? Yeah, you can eat that stuff. Okay, great. What are the instructions about manna? First, for how often does it come to them?
Just in the morning.
Every morning.
Every morning. Just in the morning.
6 days a week, right?
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a second.
Okay.
But let's talk about
Didn't mean
each
to get
day.
ahead.
You're reading ahead. Okay. So, for each day, they're to gather an omer each, which is some sort of unit of measurement. An omer for each person. You notice there, who is supposed to gather?
Each family.
Each family. Everyone's responsible for gathering for their own family. What happens if they gather a lot?
It's spoiled.
It spoils.
Or more
Well,
than
we're
that.
going to start with gathering, not
More.
keeping over. So if they gather in the morning, some families might gather more. Why would they gather more?
Have a bigger family.
They have a bigger family? Are there any other reasons that we might gather more?
Hoard.
I would gather more to save for the next day.
Right? More to save for the next day. What does that say?
Don't trust it'll come again.
Right. So it's here today, but I'm not sure if it's going to be here tomorrow. Maybe if I gather some more, that means that somebody else doesn't have as much. What about the people who gather less? What is that about? Why would they gather less? They might have less people in the house. Do you think there's other reasons that they might gather less?
Maybe it's hard work together.
It's hard to work. I don't want to do that. I'm not so sure. How's this? I don't even know what this is going to taste like. Also, it's on the ground. I'm not sure if I want this, right? So I'll get some, sure. It'll be fine. But then they measure everything out, and you know what they see? No matter how anyone gathered, everyone has exactly as much as they need. Everyone has one Omar a person. Whether they thought they were gathering more or they thought they were gathering less, they have gathered just the right amount. All right, so they eat the stuff, and some of them keep it over, right? I'm going to ration this. I'm just going to eat half of my Omer today because maybe I won't have any tomorrow. Then what happens?
It melts.
It melts. Well, it melts in the sun, yeah, but if they keep it over, it
Rots.
rots, it gets maggoty, it gets foul, right? They really learn pretty quickly this is not something to do. Why?
God told them what to do, and they
God
did
told
it.
them what to do, but does God have a purpose for it, do you think? Again, how often does it come in?
Every day.
Every day. So not eating everything that you have that day and saving it for tomorrow, what is that? What are you saying in doing that activity?
Not trusting God.
Right. And I have it now. I may not have it then. I'm not sure if God's going to actually provide this stuff for me tomorrow. So each day, after the first couple, I'm sure the first few days, so there's several missteps, and okay, let's figure this out. But then they start having to trust every day. Okay, I've got this much for today. I will have this much for tomorrow. Every day they need to trust. Every day they need to trust that not them, but God will provide for them this bread. So they do this for 6 days, and then they have a new lesson to learn, right? As you alluded to earlier. On the 6th day, they gathered twice as much food, 2 omars apiece. When all the leaders of the congregation came out and told Moses, he said to them, "This is what the Lord has commanded. Tomorrow is a day of solemn rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you want to bake, and boil what you want to boil," which are apparently the 2 ways that you can prepare manna, "and all that is left over put aside to be kept until morning." So they put it aside until morning, as Moses commanded them, and it did not become foul, and there were no worms in it. Moses said, "Eat it today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the 7th day, which is a Sabbath, there will be none." So So imagine this, right? They're doing this every day. They're gathering all this stuff because they don't get the sixth day thing yet. They gather it each day. The first couple of days you imagine, I'm going to keep this over. Oh, it's really gross. All right, let me try it again because we're humans and we don't do so well at following directions. All right, we'll try it this time. Nope, still gross. Okay, I guess I have to depend every day. You go through that for 6 days. You go out and you gather on the 6th day, and everybody, they weigh everything out, and oh my gosh, everyone has twice as much. Everybody has twice as much. What's going on? So the leaders call to Moses. Whoa, hey, what's going on? We have twice as much, and we know what happens when there's some left over. And Moses goes, guess what? Tomorrow is going to be a Sabbath, a day off, a day of rest. You have enough not only for today, but also tomorrow, so you don't have to work anymore tomorrow. Go ahead and eat everything, and today, unlike every other day, it's not going to go bad. It's going to be fine for tomorrow. Think about what this could mean for these people. What was their former occupation?
Slaves.
Slaves. How many days off,
Brickmaking.
according to the union of Egyptian slaves, how many days off do you get a year? Do you remember? 0. None. You get days off when you're dead, right? There are no days off as a slave. It does not work that way. And God says, you get to just hang out. You just get to rest. Would that have been a hard thing for them to do?
I bet it was. I bet it was.
Probably
particularly
depends on the
Saturday,
personality.
when
Right?
he said, yeah, but it's going to be okay in the morning. It's not going to have the maggots.
Right.
That'd be
So
hard
there's
to-
some more trust, right?
Yeah.
You have to trust that this extra food that you have gathered for today is still going to be okay for tomorrow. It might be super easy, right? I have worked every day of my entire life. We've been marching across the wilderness. I could really use a day off. That would be really nice, right? It's very life-giving to take that time. Is it always easy to take that time? Especially if you're in a, like, I just got to do. It's not easy to take time off. So I imagine for some of them, they are bucking under this. What do you mean we're not doing anything? I mean, just like nothing? Do we just rest? So God is teaching these people on a week-by-week basis. Every day you have to do what? To trust. You have to have faith that God will provide for you for that day. Every day, or 6 days a week, you need to go work and gather. Right? There's a participation that we have in this. There's something to do, but there's also a balance. There's a work-life balance, we would call it today, right? There's 6 days that you work, and there's 1 day that you don't. And it's okay. And the world will not fall apart. And you will still eat. But those are not lessons that we need to learn today, is it? That we need to trust each day. That we need to trust that God will provide in the future as God has provided in the present, in the past. We don't have to worry about taking time off. We don't need to worry about truly resting. Every week, the Hebrews have to learn this lesson over and over and over and over until it becomes a pattern for them. Every day they need to trust. Every day they need to rest. Or every week they need to rest. And they go through this. And they are reminded over and over and over that it is God who provides. God is watching out for them. God is providing them with water. God is providing them with food. God has provided them with freedom. God is before them. You would imagine that this is maybe foundational. It might stick with them for a little while. We'll see. The house of Israel called it manna. This is continuing to talk about this. It was like coriander seed, white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. So there you go. Moses said, "This is what the Lord has commanded. Let an omer of it be kept throughout your generations, in order that they may see the food with which I fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you out of the land of Egypt." And Moses said to Aaron, "Take a jar and put an omer of manna in it and place it before the Lord to be kept throughout your generations. As the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron placed it before the covenant for safekeeping. The Israelites ate manna 40 years until they came to a habitable land. They ate manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. An omer is a tenth of an ephah." So those of you who are doing your math, right? Not only will it keep that Sabbath day, but there's one jar that keeps how long? Presumably forever.
Oh.
So this jar of manna they put aside and they keep with them. Eventually this will be put into the Ark of the Covenant as a perpetual reminder. This is what God did for you in the wilderness. How long would they be eating manna?
40 years.
40 years. Actually, a little bit more than that. They eat manna a long time. Do you think that's that lesson that they have to learn every week for 40 years, do you think that might take? Hopefully, but probably not.
Has manna ever been found, archaeology-wise?
No, because it melts every morning.
That's true. But
We're not
the
quite
jar that
sure.
was kept.
So there are a few divisions on this one. There are some folks who say that there's this particular kind of tree that has like this edible, I think, leaves or flowers or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so there are some who are kind of on the more like liberal theology side, as in there are no miracles type thing, that say that that's probably what it is. Others on the more sort of straight up miraculous side say this is a miraculous thing that God has provided. Either way is kind of miraculous, because if it is this particular kind of bush, they only do this a few times a year, and for them to do it constantly would be a pretty amazing thing. But no, we don't know what it is, other than it is white and flaky like coriander seed, and it tastes like wafers with honey. What does that mean? I have no idea, right? We don't know what it looks like, and that's kind of the point. Again, it's called manna. Called what is it? So,
I was just sitting here thinking, suppose you got up every morning.
mm-hmm.
We have 254 kinds of cereal now, but every morning it was only cornflakes or it was only Rice Krispies.
Mm-hmm.
And you ate them every single day for 40 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would probably get pretty boring, and quail every once in a
Right.
while,
You either like them or not.
Yeah. Well, but there are two ways
We
to
want
cook
to
them.
change.
You can either make them into bread or you can boil them.
Yeah.
So it's either you can have bread or you can have oatmeal,
Soggy.
right? And those are the two things that you can have every day. But also, as you were saying that, so yes, that's super boring, right? I can imagine. I imagine that gets really, manna again, but at the same time, it's also an interesting thing. So like, people like Steve Jobs is one that does this, and I think Musk does this as well. But they wear the same thing basically every single day. Somebody asked Steve Jobs, "Why do you do that?" Anybody know why?
One less choice he has to make.
Yep. I don't need to spend brain power on what I'm going to wear. I just go, here's the thing that I'm going to wear today. Boom. don't have to worry about it, right? So the flip side of that is it can be kind of fraying, where you don't have, we're spoiled for choices. We have, walk down the cereal aisle, and that's all the just kinds of cereal. How many breakfast foods do we have? Just, think about how many different kinds of ways do you prepare eggs, right? We're spoiled for choices. But when you only have one, arguably two choices, it kind of makes it a little bit easier. Yes, it's much more boring, but it's kind of, well, this is what we're going to eat today, because there is literally no other option. Like you say to your kids, here's what's for dinner, but I don't like it. That is what's dinner for dinner, right? That's what I prepared, right? Sometimes we make some exceptions, but that's the idea. So here they are, they're in the wilderness for 40 years eventually. Right now they're still on their way. They're going to end up at Sinai, Mount Sinai, which may be over here, we're not quite sure. That's their destination. But as they're going, God is providing for them. God has provided miraculously for them as they have come out of Egypt, as they have crossed the Red Sea. But now God is also providing the much more mundane. Hey, here's food every day. It might be boring, but it's food every day. God is providing rest. So God provides sort of the big things, but also the very, very small things. We, like the Israelites, like the Hebrews, have trouble sometimes with the big things. We have trouble sometimes with those small things. We, just like they, kind of tend towards being busy always and forever. We, like them, assume that we provide for ourselves, that it's under our power to provide tomorrow's meal. And so we, during the season of Lent, maybe learn these same lessons, that God will provide, that God provides what we need, maybe not what we want, not all the options we want, but what we need. God provides rest. God gives us what we need. Questions? Comments? Great, let's pray. Lord God, thank you for this day, for our daily bread, for that which we need. In our daily lives, form us, mold us. Show us your daily providence, your gift of rest. Show us how much you support us in these small things, as well as the big things. We pray that you would bless us as we gather together and continue to gather on this, our Sabbath, our day of rest, and our day where we proclaim your victory over sin and death. Where we celebrate once again every week Easter, your resurrection, the abundant life that you provide every day, the rest that you invite us into each week, and for all eternity. Bless us as we seek to continue to be and learn more every day how to be your people. We pray these things in the name of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
She's at a meeting.
Yeah, needs to be changed.
Good morning. You heard you're not sick.
She's not sick, she's at a meeting.
No, I know that.
Hey.
Heard from her.